Good evening. Thank you everybody for coming down. Okay, board president to advise members of the audience that they may address the board regarding agenda items after the superintendent's report. Only those members whose names and addresses are listed on the sign-in sheet available prior to the start of the meeting will be recognized during the business. The chairperson will limit discussions of any item by the public to 3 minutes in order for the board to expeditiously conduct its business. Mr. Dolan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zachary. Again, we're going to get right down to business tonight. This is the third and final. God bless you, Dr. Bells. And for the next two that come. We're going to get right down to business. This is the third budget presentation, and we're going to turn the meeting right over to Mr. Harrison, and I'll have a little bit to say about our meetings and the capital reserve when he's done. So take it away, Mr. Harrison.
Great. Once again, thank you to the Board of Education, colleagues, and my staff for helping us get to the point of budget adoption, which we're here tonight to do. In addition to budget adoption, we're also going to approve the property tax report card, which has to be filed the following day of budget adoption. So the agenda is similar to what we've seen in the past with a couple of adjustments. We'll talk about the state aid, which was approved by New York State last week. We'll also talk about contingent budget. So on this slide here, similar to what you've seen in the past, we did add an additional column called the legislative budget for 22-23. And you'll see that there was not much change at all if you go right down on the bottom. It's roughly a $1,000 difference from what we had budgeted versus what the legislature has approved. I believe it was the first week of April, maybe April 7th, if I'm not mistaken. Again, highlighting foundation aid is going up by $820,000, which is the minimum granted to school districts at 3%. Universal Pre-K is continuing at the same rate that was in the governor's budget, which funds 117 full-time students. And building aid I highlight because in our budget we're over $6 million in support for 22-23 because we've closed projects that the governor did not have access to in the budget that was proposed and approved. But we did increase it in our budget to account for what we're expecting to receive in building aid going into next year. So overall, it's a 2.5% increase on state aid, or roughly $969,000. Okay, new for this presentation this year, I added a slide showing where state aid has been over the past several years. And you see it's been relatively flat from $38.3 million in 17-18 to roughly $40.3 million going into next year. The biggest component of this is obviously foundation aid, which we're not going to get as much of an increase as other districts see due to our being fully funded for foundation aid. So I have a before and after shot of the property tax cap levy, and as you remember going into the process, we forecasted a 1.47% increase, but because of new information from the town indicating that we will be getting pilot payments for 1 more year and an amount higher than we received in the past, the allowable tax levy is 0.93%, which is a $681,000 increase over the levy for this year. And that is the levy being put forth tonight, and that supports the appropriations budget. So a bar graph just indicating what has been the levy cap versus what we went out for. And this year, as you see, we're at the cap at 0.93%. But overall, going back to 15-16, we have a pretty decent track record of being at or below the cap significantly. So the top line on this graph depicts what the cap was in each particular year versus what was levied. Same information from the previous screen, just depicted differently. Now, if we were to go to the cap each year, and build upon that cap, because it is a compounding formula. The tax levy would be full 11% higher than what it is today. So I actually call this opportunity cost. I'm not suggesting we would have went to the cap in each year, but we could have. And this is the cost of not going to that cap every year. And right now, $81.9 million is where the cap would have resided if we kept that formula going. However, the levy is going out at $73.6 million. So this screen talks about the average assessment and the impact on the average homeowner given current tax rates going up 0.93%. Again, we really don't talk about tax rates because there are things outside the control of the district. So we do say that the levy is going up at 0.93%, and on a sample assessment, on average, it could impact the taxpayer by $72 annually. And that's going to change based upon proportions of homestead versus non-homestead and assessed valuations in the East Islip surrounds. So this pie chart represents the breakout of different revenue components and reserve appropriations. So going into next year, the tax levy supports 59% of the revenue budget, followed up by 33% in state aid at $41.5 million. We are appropriating over $5.7 million from reserves to support the budget for next year. And we do have our smaller revenue sources, including the pilot payments and miscellaneous revenues. So the next two pages highlight the budget accomplishments and initiatives that have been undertaken by the district or accomplished over the past year or so. I'm not going to go through them individually. Certainly, if there are any questions, I'll try to answer them. So nothing has changed on the following slides regarding expenses. The first draft of the budget is still the same draft that we're discussing here tonight. Overall, salary and benefits are going up 2.65%. And the majority of that increase is tied to health insurance increases, which were between 10 and 12%. That's roughly $1.5 million. We do have increases in instructional staff to accommodate grant expenditures from this year that are going to continue into next year. We did remove the retirees from the budget and replace them with newer, lower-cost teachers coming in to replace them. All contractual steps were increased, and we've increased support in areas of literacy, ENL, ESL, and RTI. On the custodial side, we anticipate hiring an additional maintenance mechanic. That will also be shared amongst the grounds position. And as I mentioned earlier, medical expenses going up between 11 and 12%. TRS, teacher retirement system contributions are going up, while ERS contributions are going down. Interestingly enough, it's almost a wash between the two retirement systems, so there's not much of a net increase there. Okay, here we have some equipment expenditures, as you see on the top of the spreadsheet, going up $493,000. We have items ranging from a high school sound system to work vans, a pickup truck, mowers, a pit filler, and equipment for the fitness room of about $225,000. So that's what makes up that increase. In addition, we're embarking on a new textbook program for literacy at the elementary schools. So that represents the increase in the textbook line, as well as a program for middle school math. Going down to BOCES expenditures, which are going up, that's mainly attributable to additional support in the technology field to support all the one-to-one devices, as well as increased anticipated enrollment at special ed BOCES classes. So overall, total expenditures are anticipated to go up 3.07%, or $3.7 million. So these screens, as you've seen in the past, they represent the percentage contribution to the total budget, which is staying relatively flat for salary and benefits at 73% of the total. Moving on to the remainder of the expenditures, which are also remaining relatively flat at 26.96% percentage contribution of the total budget. You do see the shifts amongst the categories. I mentioned the increased level of spending for equipment, so that's going from 0.87% to 1.24%. And these type of expenditures allow the district to be flexible on future budgets, because these are considered one-time expenditures, not having to be carried over from one year to the next unless we have other equipment expenditures that are necessary. But those are considered one-time expenditures. So under a contingency budget, which the board would adopt after either one or two budget defeats by the community, in a contingent budget, only expenses that are deemed to be absolutely necessary to operate and maintain educational programs, preserve the property, and ensure the health and safety of the students and staff are what is allowed to be included in a contingency budget. So what gets subtracted if we're in contingency? We're talking about student supplies, equipment, all those things will be removed from the contingent budget should the board adopt one. And two other qualifications of a contingent budget is that are that the tax levy under a contingent budget would have to be the same as the tax levy under the current year's budget, meaning no tax levy increase from year to year. And in addition, there's other restraints put on administrative components of the budget, which have to be managed as well. So this slide reflects the current year budget of $121 million, the proposed budget of $124.7 million, which we said earlier was a 3.07% increase. Under contingency, over $2 million would have to be removed from the budget, which would result in a $122.3 million budget. So it's about $2.4 million that would be removed, and that would be, again, student supplies and equipment. The administrative program and capital components are broken down for each one of those three categories. That's what's often referred to as the three-part budget, and those are the three components of that: administrative, program, and capital. So the average percent increase in the tax levy, including the 0.93 over 5 years, is 0.786%. The tax levy is as listed at $73.6 million. The budget being put forth before the board for adoption tonight is $124.7 million. And as we said earlier, over the past 3 years, we're appropriating the most money, 22-23, at $5.7 million to support the budget. Just a quick word on the capital reserve, which is going to be a proposition on the ballot along with the budget. This reserve was established back in 2016. And currently, there's a balance of $5.9 million. It was established with voter approval, and in order to spend, we also have to have voter approval. The main categories for spending include district-wide electrical upgrades, which support air conditioning in classrooms. We have some bathroom and paving to continue on from our bond project that will be part of the capital reserve, including a bus loop at the high school. And then finally, there'll be some renovations of the theater music area at the high school as well. So our next discussion on the budget will be May 3rd, which is the mandatory budget hearing, followed by the May 17th budget vote election. So I'd like to entertain any questions now from the board.
Mr. Harrison, thank you once again for your presentation and your work on the budget.
Thank you.
So In the slide that's your school tax rate sample assessment, since 2013, it says if a house maintains the same assessed value of 40,000, the tax has gone up less than $200 in 10 years?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Can you explain the difference between slide 20 and slide 10? Slide 20 is the tax levy, and slide 10 the one that Chris just mentioned.
So slide 20 has the historical data. And slide 10.
Slide 10 is
Yes. All right, so the main difference I would suggest is the bottom line of this slide, where it shows the impact to the taxpayer of things that are, in addition to the levy that we've kept at a lower rate, also the benefit from changes in assessment and also changes between the homestead and non-homestead proportions. So the bottom line reflects those changes. So as you can see, first we have our increases. I'm sorry, let me backtrack for a moment. The increases and decreases, the two bottom lines, reflect the changes that I talked about that are not in the control of the district that have benefited the taxpayer, which are mainly the changes in assessments, which have gone up, and also the change in proportion between the homestead and non-homestead. I hope I answered your question. And going back to page 20, those are the levy increases. So really it's the rate increases versus the levy increases that are what I'm getting at, are the differences between those two slides.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Harris.
Thank you again.
But Chris, just to go back to what you said, looking at the chart on page 10, 2013, 2014, the average assessed value, the school tax on an average assessment, $76.31. This year it will be $78.19, which is about $175. Now, sometimes when you're looking at your tax bill, people tend to look at the bottom, not at the lines. In 10 years, if it's gone up about $175, what we need to also realize is, if you go back to the other chart about the potential tax levy versus the actual, if we had been like 123 other school districts on Long Island and just went to the cap or went to 95% of the cap every year, that number would not be 175, it would be close, it would be between 1,000 and 1,200. We've used about 34 or 35% of the cap. Most districts use 99 to 100% of the cap. So if you look at the transformation on a property and the transformation within the building, I believe the Board of Education has made good, sound fiscal decisions along with Mr. Harrison, with the help of Mr. Manzo and Dr. Bells. So I think that should be noted. Is it time for my report now?
It is your
All right. We're going to do something I don't normally do. I'm just going to read from the script because I think it's important. This is America. You got to make your choices. This budget this year, about 18 cents a day. What we're going to get, if you again looking at page 12, I'm going to go down this list: equipment and supplies and materials for health and safety, including scholarship expansion to monitor student movement and within the building, student safety, keypads to for access to the building so we can monitor and then keep our kids safe. The emergency light system outside. We're going to continue to upgrade the one-to-one devices. We need a little more staffing in the area of technology because now everybody has a computer. We will continue to expand our Wi-Fi. 7 years ago we were woefully under where we needed to be with Wi-Fi. Today we have Wi-Fi that will service the demand, in terms of internet capacity, cybersecurity initiatives, which are very important, our employee management system, and many of these are one-shot items that are not going to have to be put in the budget next year. So if times are tough and we need to make adjustments, these one-shot items are not recurring costs. In the area of infrastructure, Anthony's in the back, our Director of Facilities, Buildings and Grounds. He made a great point the other day. You know, we're gonna start to look at an electric fleet, begin to buy electric cars, because by it's predicted by 2030, 2035, you know, gas-powered cars are gonna be gone. And in fact, the way the forward thinking of people like Anthony, you know, also will take us down to the next bond where that'll include the charging ports for the cars of the future. Looking at grounds and maintenance mechanic, the window repairs that we need so we can get to the next bond, roller blinds, window shades, and screens, which are desperately needed. You know, and it's not just to look pretty, okay, but, you know, for security reasons. You know, these are initiatives that we are now getting to. Upgrading our, you know, our boilers and our ventilator system to be more efficient. You know, you know, HVAC repairs in the middle school library. You know, we have a couple more maintenance vehicles, and like I said, we're gonna start to look at the possibility of going electric sooner rather than later. Finishing the high school auditorium. You know, we're gonna get a state-of-the-art sound system and orchestra pit fillers, which make that room more accessible, usable, not only by us, but outside groups. And the academic list, I'm very proud, is the longest one of them all this time. You know, between our, you know, our literacy program, support for the students, expanding the STEAM initiative, middle school math program that aligns with the new standards, which is very important because math is a subject that is changing yearly, and our kids need to change with the times. Okay, we cannot continue to say, oh, I like my math in 1970, let's keep doing it like that. You know, and also new course offerings at the high school. We've seen a total revamping up there, and it was great here, the celebration of Robotics Day. These are all things that came about because of the planning, you know, when we sat down back in 2014, 2015. And I can't say it enough. Look at our numbers, compare our numbers to other places. The board has been adamant, and Mr. Harrison and Mr. Manzo and Dr. Bells have listened, made good, smart decisions, invest wisely. Which brings me to the last one, the capital reserve proposition. You know, we had $80 million worth of need for our infrastructure. It had been neglected for years. Well, the reasons aren't important, but it had been neglected, and it falls on everybody. The community was not focusing on keeping the property updated. They had other things to do. We made a concerted effort to focus on that. But we also said, look, we can't borrow $80 million because we'll raise taxes. And you know, Mr. Harrison went to work, and I'm just rounding off now, the $60 million that we borrowed was tax neutral because it just continued the same payment from the old bond. We did a lot of work. We still have some work to do. We have some money left. We are still squeezing every last penny out of that. And we're going to see some nice things that we did not expect in the original plan. We had an $80 million list, and we've actually gotten deeper into the list than we thought. I think we're going to have some nice announcements in the coming months as we continue to. We're not rushing. We spend the money, and then we regroup and say what do we have left. But I think we're going to see some nice enhancements. We've seen more than we expected. But coming back to the capital reserve, this was our backup plan. If the bond failed, we would have at least been able to do some patching of our roofs. We had almost $20 million worth of roof work that was needed. There's $6 million sitting there. We can't spend it without voter approval. But we did not go out and come up willy-nilly with a whole bunch of new projects. We looked at the projects that we took out of the original plan, starting with district-wide air conditioning. Air quality in rooms is essential. You know, we realize we can upgrade the electric. We also know the next bond, you're going to have to replace these windows. The windows are going to be 70 years old. But we know we can put wall units in. So if the capital reserve passes, we will have air conditioning in every classroom by September of 2023. We will finish the bathroom renovations. We had to take some of the out-of-the-way bathrooms out of the project to get under that 80 million, to get under that 60 million number. The safety loop at the high school, which will make dismissal and arrival safer. There will also be to the music theater area, the final renovations that are needed. Again, we had taken a little bit out, and then the paving. You know, we want to keep our parking lots in good shape. We want to maintain them. That in that paving, the parking lots, high school, middle school, some here at the ECC, the back road at Timber Point, and I think the one most near and dear to our heart right now is the RCK playground. You know, if you look around, our playgrounds in this district are beautiful. They get a lot of use. If you ride around here, especially on the weekends, I love to see the number of kids playing on these playgrounds, and it's good and it's healthy. You know, and the good news is, we believe if this passes, we are, out on a limb here, confident that RCK Blacktop will be paved for the opening of school next year. You know, those kids deserve a place where they can go out and you know, have a family basketball court, thanks to the Rulick family, in memory of the coach that we lost, Coach Bernie Rulick. But not only that, we'll have hopscotch and whatever else kids want to have out on there. But ladies and gentlemen, I give the Board of Education and my administrative team here to my left, your right, a tremendous amount of credit. You cannot deny that they have worked very hard. You cannot deny that they have made good choices. And we, you know, I want to thank all the people that have come to the budget question and answers that we're hosting. I do enjoy those because they're small settings, and people do have personal questions, you know, or things they want explained to them. So please make it a point. We will continue to send out, I want to thank Mrs. Mann, she'll continue to send out the reminders. I'm actually going to add a couple of more dates, because we want people to be able to come in face to face and get their questions answered. And honestly, a number of people have said thank you. They don't like coming into big groups, and it has nothing to do with COVID. They just like to be able to come in, ask some questions, and leave. So, you know, ladies and gentlemen, I think this is a pivotal year for East Islip. You know, I'm very proud of the budget, and the capital reserve will take us to a place where we really will not have any major construction capital work for the next 10 years. And at that point then, as this bond starts to come off the books in the mid-2030s, the next generation can hopefully make decisions as wise as this Board of Education and my team to the left here. So thank you very much, Mr. Zachary. The floor is back to you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dolan. Okay, any public comments on agenda items only? Okay, certified personnel. Be resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education approves the resignations, terminations, leaves of absence, position abolitions, employment appointments, tenure appointments, and salary changes in accordance with applicable provisions of education law and civil service law as cited in the certified personnel attachments. Can I get a motion?
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Be resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education approves the resignations, terminations, leaves of absence, position abolitions, employment appointments, tenure appointments, and salary changes in accordance with applicable provisions of education law and civil service law as cited in the non-certified personnel attachments. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Consent agenda. Does anybody want anything removed from the consent agenda? Okay, items 9.1 through 9.10. Be resolved, the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, recommends the Board of Education approves the consent agenda, items 9.1 through 9.10, in accordance with the action presented for each item. Can I get a motion?
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
9.11. Be resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education accepts a donation of $1,000 from EI Maps to be used towards the buses for the middle school 8th grade band field trip to Music in the Parks. Can I get a motion?
Motion. Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
And again, thank you to EI Maps. We talk about it almost every meeting, whether they're running a fundraiser or helping out at the plays and concerts. EI Maps is a great organization that we're very lucky to have here in East Islip, and I want to thank everybody who's participated, not only volunteered, but has made donations and have bought their stuff. They have some great stuff. Normally they're selling outside the concerts and stuff, and the concerts will be coming up in May. So when you buy those things, this is what it goes towards. So you're seeing it and how it benefits the kids. So thank you to EI Maps for your very generous donation. Be resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education approves the attached list of appropriation changes for the 21-22 school year. Take a motion.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Old business. Do we have any old business? No? Okay.
Excuse me. Last
Yes, you had a question about the cost per pupil.
No, we covered that.
Okay.
The last time I was here, I was requesting a projection of the budget 5 years in advance. I was assuming we were going to have a discussion about that, since I brought that up the last time, so we could see where we're going to be in the future on this. And obviously, the lady said there was no old business. Who did I speak to?
This could be open. Mr. Harrison, do we have, can we, as far as project 5 years out, as far as student population, state aid, medical payments will be TRS, can we even project that with any degree of certainty?
I would suggest it be irresponsible for me to do a 5-year projection within a relatively short period of time. There are a lot of factors that go into it, and a lot of the history that we have over the past several years has now been skewed by COVID-related implications. So it's quite a study to undertake in that short period of time. If the board's pleasure is for me to do that, certainly I would request an extended time frame to put that together.
What is a reasonable amount of time? How many years? It's not 5, it's 3.
I think, and again, I think that we can start on page 7 of the budget brochure. And if you look at 2012, 2013, 2013, 2014, you see what we talked about. That is what many school districts do on Long Island. Then in 2012, 13, 2013, 2014, 2014, 2015. Now, what the latest board has done, if you look at their track record and you want to project out on that, we've already said if we had followed where we were in 2012, that 2012 to 2014 timeframe, the taxes would probably be around $1,000 to $1,200 a year more. Right now, they're at about 175, because if you look, we don't take the approach that we have for the tax cap every year. We build the budget, we have been significantly below the tax cap. We've been below, what the inflation rate was, and we've made, good sound choices. I think what Mr. Harrison is being, honest in the sense that we would have to grind down an awful lot of numbers, and we have no problem doing it, but we would need a little bit of time, because we have to.
They would be guesses. I mean, even for next year, to be honest with you, next year, we have no idea what the budget will look like next year, as far as state aid, what medical expenses are, what the TRS is, we would have no idea.
My concern here is that this teacher's contract is going to expire, and you, the school board, are going to put us 3 years into the future of this community. We're projecting 3 years of a teacher's contract going forward, not backwards. Are we in the same inflation rate that we are? You know where we're at. Projected 9% now. So, you need to take this into consideration into the future. You're going to sign a budget, a contract for 3 years in advance. And you don't think that making a projection even 2 or 3 years down the road is advisable? Or are we just going to walk in it blind and say, okay, we'll give them what they want?
We think about those things when we're negotiating our union contracts.
Well, but I'm
All of them, not just the teachers.
Deaf ears here that no one even.
It's not deaf ears.
But no one said, was there any old business? And the answer was no. All right, and that concerns me, that I'm not being listened to. All right?
Sir, I apologize that you feel that way, but again, a 5-year, I would tell you 5 years ago, taxes would be up 15, 20%.
Let's go 3 years.
And they're even.
Let's go 3 years with a contract.
I could guess those numbers myself. We don't even start. Anybody could look at these numbers and raise them 3% a year, and that would be the answer.
Do you think it's, and you know what? You've kept the budget under control, but it better be under control, because how many less students are we educating each year? 500?
No, nowhere near that.
I've seen that when the numbers there that drop down, what?
It's gradual. It's not 500 a year.
I'm not saying, but it's from where it was 10 years ago to now.
Over 10 years, yes.
The term you said, 10 years, we've dropped, but we're
If
still
you hear
spending the
that,
same amount of money.
wait, so I think we have a good way to do this. We're doing these budget question and answers. I'm not going to pretend to be Mr. Harrison, because that's his area of expertise. We are under the gun right now with he has a tremendous amount of work that has to be submitted to the state. We got deadlines, but I'll be happy to sit in one of those question and answer sessions. And again, just looking at page 7 in the budget, the levy versus the allowable versus the actual, and we had a discussion, and it was in public back in 2020, 2021. The cap was 3.83. We were looking at around a 1.5 increase, and we said at the time, if we do a 1.5, we're going to be very low for the next 2 years, somewhere between 0 and 0.5. But COVID hit, and we simply said, you know what, we're going to give the public a break because of COVID, and we went to the 0. Now, if we had gone to that 1.5, we really would, the 2021-22 and 22-23 would have been significantly lower. So we are thinking ahead. We are thinking, but to try to project, we could, just extrapolate numbers on growth and where we've been. But, we can't, we're not going to negotiate in public. We understand that part of this big picture are not, it's all of our contracts, everybody's contract, and, everything that comes with it. So we are very, very cognizant of this. That's the thing I commend. One of the things that was very attractive about coming here in the interview process, 8 years ago, or whatever, 7.5 years ago, was a Board of Education interviewing, talking about long-term thinking, long-range planning to the best we can. And, economics is like the weather. You get all your information and you put together a forecast. But there are a tremendous amount of variables. But we would be happy to sit, like I said, either in one of the sessions we have planned, you want to come up and sit one-on-one, we can go over, we'll go back and get information back as far as we can, and you'll see a history in this district of really uneven application because of influences from all sides, radical community input, decisions that were made. But if you just circle 2014, 15, move forward from 2015, 2016, you got a Board of Education that has put down, I think, a foundation for very responsible decision making. So now that we're in this, let's get through this last cycle, and we'll be happy to look at it. But rest assured, you can't build a budget if you're not budgeting for your salaries. I think back then, if the numbers are correct, I think our salaries at one point were 78 or 79% of the budget. Now it's down to about 75 or 74. So there's responsible decision making, wise investment, and like I said, we're already starting to think about what it's going to look like here in 2030. So, I'll take full responsibility for if we don't have the exact numbers right now, but I'll be happy to sit with you as long as you want. But this team has to make sure we get all our ducks in a row with the state.
But also, sir, I know you're concerned as far as the teacher contract. The teachers got a new contract 4 years ago, and your taxes are $100 more than they were 4 years ago. So as far as the impact that that last deal had on your taxes, obviously it wasn't significant. So, yeah. So, but again, as far as the 5 years, it's very difficult to assume out even next year. We would have no idea what's going to happen next year. I don't think the last few years show it's very hard to predict the future. So, we could all guess as to it, but I could almost promise you it won't be accurate.
Well, and I don't like to
For
disagree.
accuracy, looking for some type of
The tax increases, the state tax cap is around 2 to 3%. So we have to assume that we're gonna have to go to that unless we don't have to. But no year have we gone to that in the last 10 years, but if you're gonna ask over the next 5, I'm gonna guess that maybe we will. So it'd be a 10% increase. I don't know.
it's a budget analysis. It's not, I know it's not going to be accurate, but it must have some type of accuracy to it there. So,
Sure, the numbers that are in Mr. Harrison's presentation times 3%.
and again, I know you want to get this meeting over.
No, not at all.
The big concern is this globe is in turmoil. You know it, I know what's going on here. All right? And we're going into uncharted waters for the next 3 years with this contract, with our budgets and everything else. And some forward thinking of what percentage it's going to increase needs to be determined on it there. And I always get the feeling that the teachers union thinks that we got plenty of money and just give us what we want.
Well, that's why we're here to negotiate the contract on behalf of the taxpayers.
The Taylor law gives you the right to say no on it there. So,
It does, and we have.
but
Well, and I don't think it's wise, we're not gonna negotiate in public.
We can't, there's a confidentiality.
No, and I think, look, both our unions, our teachers' union, who represent a large number of our units, and the UPSCU, I believe we have a good working relationship with. We don't always agree, but we work together. But I'm not gonna speak for Mr. Harrison here, but, we budget for potential increases. And you see what other, districts do. And I think everyone wants the district to be healthy financially. The other thing is, we built a number of things into this budget where, like I referred to before, one-shot items, and you have to continue. Budgeting for schools is really counterintuitive to what you do in your home or in a business, because we have to protect, we have to protect future generations. But that's a long conversation to have another day. But in this case, we take every single expense into consideration, and we will negotiate with everybody in good faith. And I think that in the end, we will listen, and I think this board and the team over here can stand on a record of consistency, wise decision making, and we know if the economy, look, the inflation rate, you cannot take it in a snapshot. This is a tough time. We're going through a tough time, but we had years where it was very low, and we've come through some good times, and that's why you always encourage people to save for a rainy day, which this group has done. We are prepared, and I think that's a process that has to play out. And also, as you look at this budget, we could pull out a number of projects or items that we're not going to have to do again next year. So if we hit a tough economic time, we will say, okay, we'll put off buying the truck or the vehicle or some sort of equipment, or we might hold off on a program. A beautiful example is BOCES. We lost BOCES here, and we lost robotics back in 2006. And we didn't try to put it in all at once. We put our toe in the water, we did a little bit with BOCES, the kids have responded well, we have a good idea of how many kids really want it. We did a survey, we put a cosmetology room in, because that's the biggest ticket, and we knew it was cost effective to put, we do cosmetology in-house instead of farming it out, and then it looks, the hope is next year's budget we'll have the 2 years BOCES program back, because we know we can afford it. Robotics is flourishing. Those are things that never should have left, but they got caught up in the geopolitical craziness of everybody yelling at each other in this town. I think if we stay calm, we continue to look at the numbers, and we build budgets that will be flexible for the next year or two in case bad times hit. The cupboard was bare. The cupboard was bare. In 2015, we didn't have, our reserves were low, our roofs were falling down, and, our programs are antiquated. And I'm just being honest about it. And because of the vision of the board and the hard work of the folks to my left, you were right. We're in a better place. And like I said, these question and answer sessions are, I'll sit there all afternoon with you and we'll go through it. We'll build it together if you'd like.
In 2015, we were on the list, one of 8 districts most fiscally stressed on Long Island. But sir, did you sign in to speak?
Yes,
All right, I took your question from during old business because you're absolutely right. We should have addressed it in old business, but you'll have a chance to speak again in 3 minutes. We'll answer whatever you have, all right? Thank you. Any other old business?
I have no business. Last month I asked about the effects of the federal money, how it affects this budget.
The effects of the federal money, how it affects this budget.
The American Rescue Fund.
The American Rescue Fund.
You said you would show it in the budget.
I believe last presentation we talked about the number of staff and the associated benefits that are currently being paid out of the COVID grants. They are included in this year's budget. I should say next year's budget.
It is shown in the budget how it affects this year. Because that money is all spent in this budget. What is in this coming budget because of that money?
If I can continue with my explanation, between salary and benefits, there's $1 million in next year's budget that is currently being paid for from grants from this year. So the district and the board has decided to continue those initiatives that were being paid from a grant this year into next year's budget.
But you don't show it in there, it's just buried in there.
He's telling you.
He's telling me, but
He's
it's not
telling
in
you.
here.
But that's a program it seems to be a great program, so that's why we continued it academically. But it really, whether or not it was federally funded a year ago or not, really doesn't really impact that. We love the program, and it's working, and we're running it. So it really has nothing to do with the federal government or what happened last year. So really, the answer is 0.
So it's costing nothing this year.
No, because anything that we have, there's nothing that requires us to run these programs in Harrison. No. If we wanted to stop the program, if it wasn't good for the kids, we could stop it. So the answer is 0. Any other old business? New business.
What you were saying before with the robotics on Friday, I came here, the STEAM program, and what these kids were doing were amazing. And the joy of the elementary school kids that came in, the faces of them, seeing these different things and the military vehicles, it's a great program. And I have to give kudos to Ms. Wilson, Mr. Piccolo, Mr. McHugh, and everybody else who was involved, because
Ms. Hip?
they really ran it so perfectly. And they saw what the older kids were capable of, and they're starting to do some of the stuff themselves. Even the elementary kids had some little tables themselves, starting at that age. I think it's wonderful, and it's something with robotics and bringing it back and pushing it. We have to keep doing that.
Friday was amazing here. Steve's right. There were a lot of parents here who got to see it, which I'm glad the parents got to see, the chaperones. And thank you to Ms. Wilson. She gave me a little tour around and showed what they're doing in the elementary schools, showed what they're doing in the middle school, and how it leads up to the high school, and just how amazing the program is. And hopefully we just keep making it better, because the kids, really was something for them to get excited about. And only, you don't see kids get excited about school that much in elementary school as far as for math and English and all that stuff. They're excited about gym and those things. But to see their faces and and just want to participate in it. It was just amazing. So Steve's right. Thank you to everybody who put that together. There was a lot of work in that. Ms. LaPiccolo and the whole STEAM team. And whatever we can do to help them expand that and keep encouraging the kids, it was an amazing day. You're right.
No, and I,
In addition to the staff, the students, the high school students, who really ran the day and were organizing all of the elementary kids and showing them videos. So the students, in addition to the staff, should get a big shout.
You know, I'd love to have them maybe at a board meeting. I know we're kind of full as far as those things, but if we could have some of the staff or the high school kids come and show the community what they're doing in the program and maybe some pictures from that day, we'd love to have them here so that the community can see just what we're talking about.
I'm going to say this gently, but we had the COVID issue, and we had some board meetings that were very passionate, and I also know the history of the town where there's a lot of passion. We do want to bring the kids back, but piggybacking on the robotics, the kids have weathered the storm, and the skills they're learning, I'm kind of grateful for, because a lot of surgeries now are going to be laser, they're going to be, more techno surgeries, jet fighters, airplanes, training these kids to use this equipment it starts with robotics, and they were having fun, and I don't want to discount the audio-visual portion, I used to say multimedia, because it's not really TV anymore, and the kids from WFTK running around with their microphones, doing interviews, putting it out on social media, the kids promoting their classmates. They've begun to broadcast games, they want to broadcast from the plays, they want to broadcast from the concerts, and the kids will be able to show, and it's even really beautiful because if grandparents live in California or Florida and they don't, they can log on and watch. That was a long time coming, long overdue, and I think we would love to bring all the kids here to honor them. We stopped bringing them here because of some of the contentiousness, and there was a lot of contentiousness here, and that's why you lost robotics and BOCES in the first place. So, cooler heads are prevailing. I don't know if we're going to be able to squeeze in all the kids. We only have a couple more meetings left, but I guarantee you beginning in September, we're going to start bringing the kids back. And these are the things you want to see, because these kids are going to take care of us. They're going to take care of us as we move on into our golden years, and I'm very confident that they're going to do a great job.
Moving into your golden years? Any other new business?
So I just wanted to mention that last Friday night I went to the RCK Spring Fling. It was a very good event the PTA put on, but again, building on what we're talking about with community and camaraderie, it was great to see the kids interacting, the parents interacting, the community interacting with each other again, so just everybody coming back together. It was good seeing that, so I was very, very pleased to see that going on, and just the conversations everybody was having, and it was a great time by all. And then I just want to mention, because we're coming up on break, just two other community events. We have the Septo Craft Fair on the 23rd, and then the next day, that Sunday, we have the EJ Autism Jigsaw Run on the 24th. So I just want to put that out there as well.
Two great events for two great organizations that also do a lot for our kids here. And I guess I would be remiss if I didn't bring up Dr. Bells ran the Long Range Planning Committee meeting last week. It was a great meeting. It's a great group. I could tell already they're going to get a lot done. I look forward to hearing what they have to say at the end. They had some great questions and care about this community. So I want to thank Dr. Bells for all the work that she put into that, as well as the committee itself for donating their time and being part of our district. Any other new business? Joanne?
Good evening, all.
Good evening, sir.
Getting back to the federal money, I'm concerned with that. With that money, 5,400,000 plus, were there any requirements to account to the state for it or to the federal government? Did you have to report how it was spent?
Not unlike every other funded source from state or federal monies, districts are required to report periodically throughout the year, as well as a final course report. This is not unlike any other funds received by the district from state or federal sources.
So you do have to report it.
Yes.
Is that on the website, that report?
I don't believe we post the grant reports now.
How would I see it?
I guess you could put a FOIL request in if you'd like to see those reports.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for letting me speak. Ken, we're listening. I'm fortunate enough to be on the Long Range Planning Committee, and this is something we brought up, Mr. Zachary and I. A lady had asked, how do we basically get those who feel disenfranchised involved in the district? How do they see what's coming out of the district? What good things are coming out of the district? What are you paying for? And that's one of the tasks that we're taking upon on the Long Range Planning Committee. And I'm hearing you, they're hearing you, and you have my word. While sitting on that committee, I'll find ways to save money while creating jobs. I've already thought a few things. I'm going to say those things on May 3rd. I'm going to save that for May 3rd, okay? So we are listening. I'm listening to what you're saying. Also, I want to just say thank you to security and buildings and grounds for keeping my family and other families safe. And thanks for what you do.
Thank you, Charlie. Yes, they do an outstanding job.
Gentlemen, you answered a lot of my concerns this evening. I guess I'm the type of individual, I like to see what I'm getting for my money, all right? And I had 3 kids come up to this school, and one teacher, I believe it was home economics, some of them were 10 years apart, but if I were to pull out that book that she had given them, page by page, they were identical. 10 years, it never changed. Same banana bread, this, and so forth on it there. So, but yet, teachers can go back to school, get an upgrade and pay, but what are they giving the community? What are they giving the students on it there? This drives me crazy. I mean, I'm in the automotive business, and we work with voltage drops, percentages, inertia, all high school math and so forth that we use on it there. I mean, past 2 years I had to learn horizontal math. I tell you, that's rough. I don't know what was wrong with the old way, but anyway on it there. But the thing is, what does the teacher with getting an upgrade bring to the table for the East Islip School District with their, getting educated and getting a pay raise on it there? I just don't see it. It concerns me. As I expressed it before, I'm assuming you guys are going to go and work out, hopefully, the best economical deal we can. Dollars and cents wise, it's getting rough out there. We all know. We're all feeling the pinch, and it ain't going to get better over the next 3 years. So I'm looking, what are we getting for our money? And long range on it there, that's my concern. I mean, I put my 50 years in, I'm done and retired, so, money is, it's a little bit different. I'm living on earned dollars, not unearned dollars, so I need you to
understand that, that's where I'm coming from too.
We do. We understand that. And like Charlie said, even you got asked that question to the long range planning committee. We have to do a better job of letting you know what you're getting for your money. Whatever that may be, I can tell you, before I was on the board, I didn't have any kids in the district, and I would have the same questions. But being on the board, being in the schools, when I can now post-COVID, and seeing, now I have kids in fourth grade, and seeing our teachers and how hard they work, especially the last 2 years, I can tell you we're getting a lot of value for our money when it comes to that unit, no doubt.
And I'm just surprised that how many people turn out to this meeting. I mean, there's 4 of us here. I mean, where is the rest of the community? Is there?
That's a great question too. I could tell you back in 2012, 13, when I remember we first started coming around, and Carl Frazier said we didn't have enough money for the following year to have full-day kindergarten, to have sports, and to have music. And I can tell you this place was packed.
Oh, I was
So
here.
when those meetings happen and you're going to be taking away such important things from the kids, it gets packed. When you have good budgets that add and don't take away, you generally don't have as much excitement. So unfortunately, the cost of having a good budget and adding things for the kids and doing good by the community and the children, unfortunately doesn't generate that much excitement like taking it away does.
All right. I hope it's not that because everybody's got to get a second job.
I hope not.
It's not the cause. All right.
I hope
But
not.
again, you know where I'm coming from on the teacher's contract, and
And thank you for coming down. Okay, Charlie, what do you got?
I just wanted to share something positive with Ken. Islip Bulletin and South Bay Neighbor, they post a lot of cool stuff about the district and the kids and all that, so maybe that would help a little bit. But I can hear what you're saying.
I think I just want to go home.
We could do that too.
Yeah.
Option B.
True, yeah. I guess all I want to say is that the pupil cost is just out of sight. If you just do the math on the numbers, if you approve this with the numbers as they are, we are up to now $37,000 per pupil cost in this district. Even in Long Island, like the most expensive contracts probably on the planet for teachers, 32,000 is the average. We're 5,000 per student above that. And when you talk about the fact that between the early teens and now, we've lost, probably closer to 800, not 500. How can anyone explain why we aren't paying less? Why our budget isn't less than it is now?
Just so happens, you're asking in a good year.
Really explain that. And
When inflation is at 8.5% more than it was a year before, to have your taxes go up an estimated $70 or less than 3% year-over-year budget. But you're not listening to me, so it doesn't matter. You're gonna get up and ask the same questions. And Ms. Beckett, I get it.
well, but you say the same thing.
I get it.
Everything is always wonderful. There's
Because-
never any problems, and we're not only spending the least that we possibly can. Nobody believes that. We are overtaxed here. We are definitely
Well,
overtaxed.
that's why we've worked over the last 10 years to keep it less than $200. Do you recognize that? Do you recognize, can you say it?
You can thank the tax cap that we worked for decades.
It has nothing to do with the
on.
tax
You
cap,
can
because we're
thank
below
that.
it every year. We go nowhere near the tax cap. Did you listen to Mr. Harrison's presentation? Ms. Becky, I get it. How long have you been doing this now? 30 years?
Yeah.
And there was a time when what you did was very important here. It really, in the 90s, 2000s, we wouldn't be where we are now if not for the work that you did for the last 30, 35 years. So thank you for that.
It's even more
But
important now.
See, I disagree, and I see that for the last 10 years, taxes being held the same, virtually the same. So, you know, to say that, I mean, the
Loaded the budget
taxpayer,
up
but
more than you should have.
let
You
me
have
finish.
reserves that are way, and I read from the report, from the
I know,
controllers.
the Newsday report from 4 years ago, yes. Did it also say we were one of the fiscally stressed districts on Long Island in 2015, and the state mandated that we raise our reserves?
I have all those
I
clippings,
know.
I cut it all out, I know.
Okay, I know, they're all.
You're
they're all-
exaggerating, I'm sorry.
Not at all.
yeah.
But I get it, you know, but for the last 8 years, for taxes to go down 3 times and to be virtually the same, and to say that we don't consider the taxpayers. I can tell you for the last 8 years, these 5 people, along with Mr. Montori, Ms. Carney, Mr. Behan, worked very hard to keep the taxes down as much as we could. And the taxpayers have been one of our main priorities, them and the kids. Okay, and to be able to keep the taxes down and redo these facilities, get every kid a computer, bring back robotics and BOSEs and all this stuff. I know it's hard for you to understand and to realize that you're not relevant anymore, but really, you know, doing those things and keeping the taxpayers and the kids and putting them first and doing this, you know, that was really our priority. You know, making TaxPack irrelevant was kind of a unwanted coincidence to it. It's really the taxpayers and the kids that we were out. There's plenty of districts who could still use TaxPack, who don't reduce taxes, who don't keep taxes down. I could say a few of them come to mind, pretty much every other one but us. So maybe they could use your help, but really the new TaxPack is the people up here, because we do everything that you would want us to do, or should want us to do. Okay, we do,
No.
and we're a little bit kinder. But this is really a new TaxPack going forward. So thank you for all you've done. But I know you see that the stuff that you put in your newsletter, which is inaccurate, and the results you get, the candidates you support. So I know you see that it's not really relevant anymore. So I understand you fighting that. But you're looking at the new TaxPack here up on these days.
Excuse me?
This is the new TaxPack. We look after the taxpayers.
You're the new tax back?
We are.
Oh, thank goodness.
So thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you
But,
very much, yes. One of the things I would like to clear up is, the other gentleman was talking about the 5.4 million that was given to us to spend. Now that 5.4 million was added to the budget, right?
When we got it, if
Okay,
we're not
now,
getting it anymore, it's
if
not part of this
that
budget.
5.4 million was mostly for hiring people, maybe people that you would not have hired without this gift from the federal government. I heard it up in this relevant tax pack group, which
Yes.
you're saying you are, concerned that what do we do? What do we do when that so-called one shot isn't there anymore, and we're stuck with bodies of people who get pensions
First of all,
and benefits,
we're
and
not
we're
stuck
going to have
with-
for the rest of our lives, basically.
Man, we're not stuck with anybody. Any programs that started with that money, that was good, that helped the kids, that the kids who were working from home for a year and a half without, you know, the full benefit of being in school, if those programs help the kids, we kept it. If the programs don't help the kids, we get rid of it. So there is no ties or whatever they want to do, we do.
But if $5 million is dropped in your lap with this specific task of using it to hire people, and for that matter, to hire people who had a particular thing to teach that many people don't agree with,
I don't know what that
all of
means.
this is over with, we're going to be $5.4 million higher than we would have been otherwise.
You know, just like everything else, in just 1 second, John. As far as the bond, you cried taxes will go through the roof with the bond. The energy performance contract, $15 million, look what they're doing, the taxes are going to go through the roof. Now the $5 million from the federal, you know, how many bodies are we hiring? We're not even raising your taxes, not even 1%.
Hey,
So isn't that the bottom line? Everything that you said, as far as we've raised taxes tremendously, and we're only $200 over 10 years,
yeah.
obviously you were wrong.
Well, that bond is giving us a $9 million debt every year to pay, and that debt is attached to all of our properties individually and collectively. So don't you tell me anything about that.
I will, because it would have cost a lot more to do a pay-as-you-go that you pushed for, which would have cost this district and the taxpayers a lot more, but you don't
What you
understand
have
it.
buried in the budget right now, you could do it all without a bond.
Not true. Can't spend $20 million
Okay, all
that
right.
we don't have. Thank you. Okay, that's all. The next Board of Education regular business meeting will be held on Tuesday, May 3rd, 2022 at 7 p.m. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Everybody have a good night. Happy Easter. Enjoy all the holidays. And please be safe over break. If you travel, be careful.